Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Matchup Maximizer podcast, presented by Keeping Karlsson. I'm your host, Jeremy Versillo, filling in for the normal host, Elan Dubrovsky. Elan's on vacation this week, so he graciously asked me to step in and do this podcast. I'm excited for my first opportunity to do a solo cast for Keeping Karlsson, and especially one that focuses on streaming, because I love optimizing my lineup and getting as many starts as possible every week. Without further ado, let's jump into a quick overview of the schedule in Yahoo Week 17. This is a weird week because of the All-Star break. It's actually a 14-day matchup instead of 7, and there are 10 game days. If you play on Yahoo, your moves for the week are actually for the entire matchup, so keep that in mind. Your 4 moves in Cupful will not reset on the following Monday of 17B, I'll call it. The 3 game days before the All-Star break, which I'll be calling week 17A, has only 9 different teams playing and only 3 teams that play twice. Additionally, all 9 of those teams don't play again until Friday or Saturday in week 17B, and only one of them plays more than once. So you're not actually really adding games to your schedule by picking up players. Every team plays between 2 and 4 games, with most teams playing 3 over the entire 2-week matchup. That being said, one thing you can do, especially if you have very few streamer slots or the ability to preload on Saturday or Sunday this week, is add guys who play in week 17A, and then over the All-Star break, you can drop them for someone who plays 3 or even 4 times in week 17B, effectively giving you 6 starts from a single slot. That is the first strategy I'm going to talk about before the break in this show. And then on the other side, I'm going to talk about guys you could maybe add if you want to make an ad for the whole 2-week period, if maybe your roster has a lot of open slots due to injury, or if you're in a tight matchup this week and aren't going to be able to make moves until Monday morning. Last but not least, there's a third strategy you can employ this week, which is to hold on to your moves through the All-Star break. This will allow you to monitor who other people in your league drop, because we're getting to a point where some teams need wins and may drop rosterable players. You could use your fab to jump on those, or you could just wait to see what line shakeup happens coming out of the All-Star break. There's a number of guys who may or may not return from injury, which could affect top 6s across the league. And with the time off, the coach may just shuffle up some lines, get a new look, and give some other guys some opportunity. Without further ado, let's discuss some streamer targets for week 17A, i.e. you're probably adding these players and then planning on dropping them over the All-Star break, but have the luxury of making the ads Sunday night or Monday morning and switching them out later. The first team that plays 2 games over this 17A week is Ottawa, who plays on Monday and Wednesday, although the days they play doesn't really matter because all 3 days are very light. Some players I've identified here: Eunice Korpisalo is only 70% owned in Cupful leagues. This number should be higher because his running mate Anton Forsberg is hurt and on long-term IR. I don't really see Mad Sogard stealing a significant number of starts. He may get one of the 2 next week, but Korpisalo could be worth a look longer term just because the volume he's going to get, and Ottawa has one of the best schedules for the remainder of the regular season because they're a bit behind on games played compared to the rest of the league. Additionally, I have a trio of forwards who are kind of interchangeable to me. Shane Pinto, Ridley Gregg, and Matthew Joseph are all playing in Ottawa's top 9, which is a pretty balanced look. Pinto's 47% owned, Gregg is 19% owned, and Joseph is only 6% owned. That 6% is interesting because in today's morning skate, Matthew Joseph was moved up to the second line, playing with Stutzla and Tarasenko, while the third line was Shane Pinto, Ridley Gregg, and Drake Batherson. Shane Pinto is the one of the 3 who's been on Power Play 1, although that was only 1 game. I'm not sure if that's going to stick. I would suspect all three of them are more power play 2 guys. I guess my point is you could add any of those three and have pretty even odds of picking up a point or two. They're all players that can create some of their own offense, but not getting elite deployment opportunities. So go out and add one of them maybe. Tarasenko is another option. He's 100% owned in Cupful, but has been dropped in plenty of leagues. I'd definitely be adding him first if he's available in any of your leagues. On to the other Monday-Wednesday team. The Nashville Predators also play 2 games. Not as many options here. You've got some lower-end forwards like Cody Glass and Yakov Trenin. Not really interested in them. The 2 I've identified are Colton Sissons is only 36% owned in the Cupful. He's been on power play 1 lately, and while he's not on the top line, he's in the top 6 and playing a lot of minutes. He's a very good 2-way forward. I believe he plays on the penalty kill also, and has had games in the 22-minute-a-night range recently. I think he's the one I'm going to go add in my league because Shane Pinto is already owned, but I'll go through at the end and summarize who the streamer of the week is. Another option is Jeremy Lauzon, who's a 40% owned defenseman. Lauzon's on pace for 320 hits this year, almost 5 per game. It would be a top 10 hitting season of all time. Granted, that stat has only been tracked for the last 15 years or so. That's probably not worth as much in the Cupful specifically, because hits are only worth a quarter point, while blocks and shots are a half point. But in other leagues where hits are worth a bit more, relatively speaking, he could be worth an ad because he even had a 12-hit game recently. And like I said, averaging 5 per game, that's enough of a peripheral floor to be worth adding for 2 starts. The last team that plays 2 games on week 17A plays Tuesday and Wednesday, and that's the San Jose Sharks. The Sharks are kind of a mess. Their top 6 is a bunch of names that you look at and are like, these guys are top 6 players? But the nice thing is they're almost all available. My top choice from the Sharks would be Fabian Zetterlund, who's 47% owned and has actually been quite hot lately. He's been on power play 1. He's gotten 20 plus minutes in each of his last 5 games, I believe, and he's playing on the top line with Hurdle. Other options in the top 6 would be Barabanov, who's also on power play 1, and then Hoffman and Duclair, who are power play 2, line 2 currently. Duclair kind of scares me because he's been scratched a couple games recently. He's had some 13-minute games. Definitely finds himself in the coach's doghouse a bit. He may have the most talent of that group, though, if you want some upside. Overall, though, I think I'd take any of the Ottawa or Nashville players I mentioned over the Sharks. Last but not least, there's a defenseman I want to shout out for the second time in 3 days is Shakir Mukhamadullin. He's just a really fun name to say. This is more of a gambler's choice long shot option. But if you have space on defense, in his first period of NHL hockey today, he played 6 minutes and 18 seconds, had 2 shots, a hit, and a block. So it looks like he's on pace for 18-ish minutes, should be getting some peripherals, which is exactly what he did in the AHL. I don't know if he was on power play 1. I didn't look at the box score. And there's also the risk that he gets sent down or scratched for either of those Tuesday, Wednesday games. And he'll almost surely be sent down over the All-Star break because it sounds like Thrun and Ferraro are due back shortly after. And for completion's sake, I'll briefly mention the teams that play once in Week 17A. These are teams that if you have a player from that you're planning on dropping, maybe you should hold them and wait until Thursday over the All-Star break to drop them. But Anaheim has a game Wednesday against San Jose. Columbus and St. Louis play on Tuesday. Detroit plays on Wednesday. And Seattle plays on Tuesday. If you're doing a 1-game streamer, I think Seattle is the target because, first of all, they play Sunday this week, so you can grab a Seattle guy with the intention of hanging on to him for next week in addition to helping you in your matchup now. And Seattle's 1 game is against San Jose, which is always tempting for scoring. With that, I'm going to take a short break and come back with some streamers for Week 17B, or for the entire 2-week matchup, if that is what you are targeting with your streams. Welcome back, everyone. Looking at the schedule for week 17B, there's not a ton of places to gain some games played. Every day except for Saturday is relatively light on schedule. There's a lot of teams that played in week 17A that aren't playing Monday through Friday. And Saturday is a busy day, though, with 26 out of the 32 teams playing. Unfortunately, there's only one team that has 3 off-night games, which I'll get to. So if you are full up on Saturday, you're basically adding a 4-game streamer and only getting 3 games out of them, or you're adding a 3-game streamer and then switching them out Saturday or Sunday. The first of 3 teams that have 4 games in week 17B is the Colorado Avalanche. They start their week early with a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday schedule and have some interesting streamer options to look at. Josh Manson is 79% owned in Cupful and has been really hot lately. I was looking at his stats and was surprised at how many points he had because he's not known for that. He does hit a lot. There's a safe floor there. I can't really recommend him on the points, though, because I just see that as some unsustainable puck luck, especially with 2 other defensemen out there, Sam Girard and Bowen Byram, 36 and 34% owned. I think they're a bit more likely to get you points than Manson, despite what the past 2 weeks of games has been telling us. Maybe it's a fallacy for me to not be reading into the recent scores. On the forward side, Colorado's entire second line is actually pretty unowned in Cupful. The best option of the 3 would actually be Ross Colton, who's 70% owned. He's also been on Power Play 1 lately and getting some points there. He's a good player. He seems to have blossomed with some improved deployment. I'd definitely be looking to add Ross Colton if he's available in your league. The other second line options are Logan O'Connor, 49% owned and red hot. He had a hat trick recently. He's been scoring a lot of goals despite lower shot numbers. And the sneaky deep league ad could be Miles Wood at 4% owned, recently returned from injury, playing on that second line, and getting some points while doing it. I would caution you with Miles Wood, though, because Arturi Lehkonen also recently returned from injury and is on the third line, but I suspect they're going to slowly move Lehkonen up the lineup as he works his way back to 100%. The second team with a 4-game schedule in Week 17B is the Vancouver Canucks, playing Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. Their top 6 has shuffled up a lot recently, so this is a team it may behoove you to wait until practices resume after the All-Star break to see what type of players are available and who's in the top 6. As of today, Ilya Mikheyev, 2% owned, is on the first line, and on the second line is Pia Suter, also 2% owned. Suter's also Power Play 1 as of the last game, but I don't trust that will stick for very long. They keep putting Kuzmenko back there. I refuse to recommend Kuzmenko just because of the volatility. He could easily get scratched or benched or play really bad, but I think there's a better chance that Kuzmenko comes in and rains on someone's parade, which is why I think you should be a bit cautious before adding Canucks for the 4-game matchup. Additionally, Dakota Joshua, despite playing the bottom 6, has been scoring a ton this year. He's 53% owned in Cupful and has the best fantasy points per game of these 3 forwards, or the 4 forwards if you count Kuzmenko. I think he's a reasonable option. I think I'd probably rather shoot for the upside with Suter or Mikheyev, assuming that deployment sticks. Again, though, patience, please, with Vancouver. Unlike Vancouver, where I'm recommending patience, the Washington Capitals also have a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday schedule and have 2 guys that are available in about 20% of Cupful leagues that absolutely should be added right now, and I can't believe they're both this available. Dylan Strome is only 81% owned, and TJ Oshie is only 77% owned. You are absolutely sleeping if either of these guys are on your waiver wire and you've got a weak spot on your roster. They've both averaged more than 4 Cupful points per game over the last 30 days. They're both on Power Play 1. I think they're both technically line 2 and not playing with Ovechkin, but that's honestly been the Caps' better line recently, and the Caps media has posted it as their first line. So keep that in mind. I think both of these players are add now, keep them in your roster for the 4-game week, and assuming nothing drastic happens, continue keeping them on your roster after that. Some lesser options on the Caps. Both goalies are pretty widely available. They may split the games 2-2. They may go heavier on Lindgren because he's been the better goalie this year. Those are decent options, especially if you're a 1 or 0 goalie type person. For forwards and defensemen, Nick Dowd has some points recently, but he also has a bunch of goals on one-shot games. I'm not a big believer in that sort of production, and he just doesn't get enough minutes to rack up the peripherals to be worth an upside shot. Same with Rasmus Sandin and Martin Ferravari. They've had flashes recently, but I think there's better defensemen available from, say, Colorado or the next team I'm going to talk about, the New York Rangers, that I would be passing over any of the Caps defenders. The New York Rangers are the one team that has 3 games and does not play on Saturday. So you can add a Ranger, get their Monday, Wednesday, Friday games because all those days are light, and not have to worry about it cluttering up your lineup for Saturday. If you have extra moves, it would enable you to add a goalie or add someone early for Sunday. So there's some appeal to the Rangers here. Similar to the Canucks, though, the Rangers' top 6 is a bit in flux at times. The best guy in their top 6 that would be available is Alex Lafreniere, who is 91% owned in Cupful. Probably not widely available there, but in other leagues could be. He's actually played really well this year by the eye test, both from the games I've seen and from talking to Rangers fans. He's been a bit snake-bitten. His shooting percentage and individual points percentage and on-ice shooting percentage are all a tad low. I think he deserves more than the 46, point pace that he's on. And he's currently on the second line with Trocheck and Panarin. So those are some good line mates to be playing with. Currently, the top line right wing is Blake Wheeler, who's only 2% owned in Cupful. Capo Caco, who is also 2% owned in Cupful, has been there too. And so has Will Cooley, who's 4% owned. I think of those 3, you kind of wait and see. I don't think any of them are high value ads that you have to go out and get before next Monday when they actually play. But whoever of those 3 is in that first line right wing position is worth considering. I know Wheeler had a pretty good game. Was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday on Friday. Wheeler had a goal at least, so worth considering. As for defensemen, there's an interesting situation because as of about an hour ago, Jacob Trouba was suspended for 2 games, meaning he'll miss both the Monday and the Wednesday game. Trouba hasn't been playing power play time this year, so there's no boost to anyone for that, but it does mean a lot of minutes are going to be up for grabs, and Keandre Miller is only 64% owned, and Eric Gustafsson is only 6% owned. I suspect those 2 will be taking up, an extra 2 to 3 minutes a night in order to fill in for Trouba without putting too much onus on their bottom pairing or rookie defensemen. So those are some guys worth considering. With that, I have covered all of the teams that I think are worth streaming from in the next week. As I mentioned at the top, a very valid strategy this week is to wait and see who gets dropped, especially the couple teams that have a 7 to 10 day gap in their schedule. If someone really good on a top 6 and a power play 1 gets dropped, maybe I'd prioritize the long term, especially if my team is in a comfortable playoff position. As for the streamers, though, I'm not going to name TJ Oshie my streamer of the week because I refuse to believe TJ Oshie is a streamer. I called a pause the pod moment on short shifts earlier this week, and so I feel like that's not a streamer of the week, even though you should add TJ Oshie or Dylan Strome if they're available. As far as the streamer level players, my week 17A streamer of the week is going to be Shane Pinto for 2 games. And my week 17B streamer of the week is going to be Ross Colton for 4 games. we'll have to see how those guys go. I know Trev has been doing an awesome job in the patron Discord, keeping track of the accountability of the show hosts and the takes they make on the podcast. Additionally, if you're a patron, feel free to tag me in the Matchup Maximizer channel and ask about your specific situation. If you're considering someone else, or if you are trying to figure out the best way to optimize the quantity of games you can get next week. Finally, I'm going to give you one Sunday savior, a player that maybe you can add Sunday to win you your matchup. And the Sunday savior for this week is really anybody on the Seattle Kraken who's available. The Kraken play the late game on Sunday of the two games, so you can hold out through the first game and see if you even need a Sunday savior. Additionally, they play against Columbus, who will probably be starting Daniil Tarasov, who's given up 4 or more goals in a bunch of starts recently. Kraken players also play on Tuesday next week, so it's not even like you're wasting a move. You'll get a Sunday game, you'll get a Tuesday game, week 17A, and then can stream them out for someone week 17B. Some Kraken players that are worth considering: Jaden Schwartz is just back from injury and has points in a couple games in a row. Andrei Burakovsky got bumped up to line 2 recently. Yanni Gord came back from suspension and got a point last game. Matty Beniers has been practicing with the 4th line and probably has been dropped because of his injury. Tomas Tatar is still on the first line, and Will Borgen is a nice defenseman option for some safe hits and blocks. If I'm naming one guy, though, I gotta go with Jaden Schwartz. He's really good when he's in the lineup, just a matter of whether or not he's healthy, which he happens to be at the moment. And with that, my first ever solo episode of Matchup Maximizer for Keeping Karlsson is done. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please give us a follow at Keeping Karlsson on Twitter, or join the Patreon Discord for constant hockey talk. You can visit the sites I used to research this episode with at GameDayTweets.com, Cookupful.com, and Frozen Tools. Thanks again for listening, and good luck in your matchup both this week and next.